So, how many different client avatar do you really have? Today on the Daily Ish Show.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Ish Show, a show not just for rental housing providers, but anybody looking to get a little bit more white space on your calendar. Welcome to all of you who are watching this on either YouTube or the Facebook page. But let's talk about this. How many client avatar do you actually have? So let me put it to you this way. Or let me start out by asking you a question first and foremost. How many of you, by a show of hands, and I can watch with my spy satellites, but how many of you would like to have complete and total control of your calendar, right? And obviously be able to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, for however long you want to do it, right? That sounds pretty cool, right? This is something that I often talk about when we're talking about the concept of being time wealthy, of having complete total control over your calendar, doing what you want, when you want, with whom you want, for however long you want to do it. Now, and having a certain standard of living while you do it, right? I mean, you could do this and live like a kashi crunching scroll, but you're not, or, a scribe, but you're not really living the life that you want. Okay. So having a certain standard of living behind that, this is where I really talk about having a strategic approach to managing your business. And what I'm talking about specifically, a strategic approach is going to take and begin with the end in mind. Something we talk about that maybe some of us have learned from Stephen Covey when we were back in his book, the famous book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So let me ask you this. For most of you who watch this show, many of you are in multiple businesses. So how many of you are in or want to be in multiple businesses? Many people who come who have a rental property, for example, many of them are often coming out of other businesses that they created. Many small business entrepreneurs love the concept of having rental properties because it's mailbox money that they don't actually have to do anything, and it gets them out of that horrible job that they created for themselves. What I mean by that, because when we talk about the four core functions of business, for those of you who watch the show, you guys know it is lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting, right? So typically when people get stuck, and they get stuck in the form, they get stuck in the operation of the business, they get stuck in the form of whatever job that business is, right? So for example, if they are a roofer, they end up if they're in the roofing business, they end up being a roofer. If they're in the plumbing business, they do plumbing all day. If they're if they're in if they have a property management business, they end up being a landlord all day, right? And that's why I'm saying when they're stuck, they often get stuck in the operation in the form of a job. So, and we'll talk on another episode about the other four core functions of business. There are the three out of the four. But here's the thing, and when I'm talking about this in the context of client avatar and how many that you have, if you're in the rental business and you're trying to grow that rental business, right? How many of you are out there where you have a rental business and you're trying to grow that rental business? Many people who come to me often are. They have 5 and they want to turn it into 25, or they have 25 and they want to turn it into 225, whatever it is. I would argue that you have actually 2 separate businesses. And the reason for that is because they are 2 different client avatars. So let me identify really what we're talking about when I say what's a client avatar. The client avatar is, who do you specifically want to work with? Who are you targeting? All right. So let's make that relevant to in the context of you having this property management business over here. Now, when I say property management business, I don't necessarily mean that you're a property manager where you're doing third party management. Now, for some of you, you are. Like, I have a property management business, but I also have properties that I manage on my own through my property management business. Okay. But if you're managing your own individual portfolio, you, in essence, are a property manager, and you start thinking about it in the context of being a property manager. All right. If you have a property acquisition business, you're having a very different conversation with people you're trying to attract. So follow me here for just a second. The conversation that you're having with someone who you're trying to rent a property to is a very different conversation than someone you're trying to buy a property from, right? So if you carve those off into two separate businesses, one as an acquisition business, the other as a property management company, it's much, much easier. Why? Because the lead gen is different, the sales is different, the operational function is different, and generally the accounting is going to be different as well. So when you start carving those things out, it becomes massively easier. You can say when someone comes to you and you're saying, "Hey, I've got someone who wants to talk to you." You go, "Okay, what is it you're doing? Because I want to know what hat I need to wear." And if they're calling, let's say for argument's sake that you run your infrastructure, and for those of you who know the VIP method, vision, infrastructure, and process, if your infrastructure has a phone system that looks like this, it's going to get very confusing for them, and it's going to get very confusing for you if they're calling and they don't even know what it is you're about. Not long ago, I had a weird charge that showed up on one of my credit cards, and it was for a hotel that I had stayed at, but I stayed at a different property than this one that was showing up for. It was a Hampton Inn, I believe. Well, this Hampton Inn was owned by a couple of private investors. Well, those private investors, whenever I called to challenge I had to call their corporate headquarters, and it was down in a town in Indiana, a little bit further south. So the charge was for a mastermind group that I was holding up in Fishers, and it showed up in a town. We'll say it was Noblesville, right? So when I called them, the phone number had all sorts of different businesses that was tied to. There was a hospitality division, there was a rental property division, there was, and I don't even remember what the other division was. I don't think it had anything to do with real estate. So it was very, very confusing to me, the end user. I'm thinking, what in the world? Who am I calling? Right? It was just unnerving because I'm thinking, is this even a legitimate outfit? What they were trying to do is run the same all of these different businesses off of the same phone infrastructure, right? Made it very, very confusing. So all I'm saying is that if you treat this as two separate businesses, then it makes the conversation with the lead generation from that perspective much, much easier. So that's one of the things. So when you're really asking the question, how many different client avatar do you have? Think about that in the context of the business. So when you are having this conversation, it's much easier to have a conversation with someone and not try to have a conversation with everyone. All right. Well, that's all I have for today, folks. Again, my name is Mark Dolfini. You can get more information at landlordcoach.com. And yeah, I am soon going to be going on vacation, and I am telling you what, I am very, very happy about that. We're actually going away for spring break, and it's going to be pretty cool to spend some time away with the family. So, anyway, you may not see me for a little bit, but again, thanks so much for all of your support. Please be sure to place a value on your free time, because if you don't, someone else will. And most important, there is no amount of money that will make time irrelevant. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.